My daughter's probably going to lecture me about filming right in front of a window, but the backlighting is super flattering, right? Hi BookTube, it's Kim at K. Becker's Books, and I thought today I would come to you with a mid-month December wrap-up. Today is the 17th, so I thought I would show you the books that I've read so far in December, and at the end of the month I am going to try to do a year in review. So let's go over what I've read so far. This has been a really interesting month because, believe it or not, I've read 8 books so far, and it's barely over the halfway point. That's usually unheard of for me. I have read 10 books in a month before. I've read way less than that, 3, 4, up to 6. But I typically have not been able to read up to 8 books at this point in the month. So here we go. I'm going to go from the books I read earliest in December to the books I just finished. The first one is Colson Whitehead's The Nickel Boys. And I had presented this as a book I was currently reading in my intro video. This is, Colson Whitehead is a Pulitzer winner, a National Book Award winner, and this was the first book that I finished in December. I gave this 3 stars on Goodreads because it is actually a pretty short book. With the epilogue, it's a little over 200 pages, and I felt that if Whitehead had given it a little more length and a little more time, he could have developed the atmosphere a little bit better or more completely. I was interested in the story. I was interested in the setting and the characters that he wrote, but the atmosphere did not feel full and rich enough to me. He describes the Nickel Academy in Florida, where it's basically what it used to be called a reform school for boys. And they had both white boys and black boys and all different color of brown boys in the middle who were sent there for so-called reform. However, it was basically a prison and a torture chamber where boys who didn't deserve to be there were sent. But like I said, it was a good story. I liked the characters, but I wanted more in the atmosphere of the Nickel Academy and more of the emotion behind what happened to the main character Elwood and how he really felt being sent there unjustly. There's a twist at the end of the book which I definitely did not see, so I did enjoy that. But to me, I thought this was good. Not great, and I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads. The next book that I finished in December that I also read or had in my initial video of a book I was currently reading that I actually contrasted with the Nickel Boys is Jaqueline Woodson's Brown Girl Dreaming. Now this is Jaqueline Woodson's somewhat of a memoir written in verse. She talks about her childhood with her grandparents in the South, in the Carolinas. She was one of 4 children, talks about her father having left the family, or more specifically, her mother moving the family between her parents' house in the South and New York City. It's a beautiful book. I loved the verse, the format of the book. It was interesting to contrast it with the Nickel Boys because this was a story of a young black girl growing up in the 60s versus an account of a young black boy unjustly accused in a reform school in the 60s. And it's not to say that Jaqueline Woodson did not go through anything harsh or difficult in her life, but it was a much different tone in the story. I loved this book. I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads and really enjoyed this one. I believe it's marketed towards middle schoolers, but it was a very good book that I truly enjoyed. The next book is the first in a series, and this is Tana French is In the Woods. This is the first in the Dublin Murder Squad series. And I've had this book forever and not really avoiding it on purpose, but I decided to read it because I was interested in a thriller mystery. This is a crime thriller. Really, really enjoyed this one. I loved how she wrote, the format, her style, the tone. I'm not typically reading crime fiction or crime mystery thrillers, but I really did enjoy this. And I read one of her other books in the series, The Secret Place, a while ago, and I will probably reread that, but I tend to be a purist, and if it's series, I want to start at the beginning and go all the way through, so I will probably reread The Secret Place when I get to it. This is the story of two detectives who it's set in Dublin, Ireland, in the country. They are investigating the murder of a young 12-year-old girl in the same town that the male detective grew up in. And in the very beginning of the book, no spoilers, he is part of a group of 3 children who get lost, so-called lost, in the woods near their home, and he is the only one that comes out alive. So there are 2 storylines going through the book, and French does that really beautifully in how she connects the background of the detective with his current position, his current role in investigating the murder of a girl. She discusses how he could possibly get away with doing that. He should not be involved in investigating a crime in the same town that he disappeared in and was part of what they believe was a crime decades earlier. So really enjoyed this one. We'll continue with the series. The next book, this was a disappointment, and I think it was one of those situations where the marketing got away with what the actual book was about. And this is Helen Phillips, The Need. Now, I'm going to read, this says on the jacket, it says, I'm going to try to read this quickly. When Molly, home alone with her 2 young children, hears footsteps in the living room, she tries to convince herself it's the sleep deprivation. She's been hearing things these days. Now, she has a 4-year-old and a baby, so she's still dealing with raising young children, getting very little sleep and sleep deprivation. Startling at loud noises, imagining the worst-case scenario. It's what mothers do, she knows. But then the footsteps come again, and she catches a glimpse of movement. So further on in the description, it says, in The Need, Helen Phillips has created a subversive, speculative thriller that comes to life through blazing, arresting prose and gorgeous, haunting imagery. That part is true, in my opinion. She writes beautifully. However, The Need is not a thriller. It starts off as reading like one. The atmospherically, it reads like a thriller. There's what you think is a home invasion. There is a mother with young children home alone. How is she going to deal with this? Is there an invader in her home? What's going to happen? Is there going to be a crime? But it turns out this is not a thriller. This is a book about the excruciating yet glorious parts of motherhood. It is the story of a woman who gave birth to children, her physical recovery, her emotional and mental state and recovery, and what that looks like, what happens when you are a working mother of young children, you're still nursing. There's a lot tied into this, but it is not a thriller. It's a psychological exploration of motherhood and how this particular mother dealt with her experiences. I did like this. I liked the writing style, but I was really disappointed in the direction that the story went, and I felt cheated because when the marketing people get a hold of a book and they describe it one way, and I didn't know too much about the story, so I went in expecting it was going to be one thing. In completing the book, realizing that it was something altogether different, that was a little disappointing, so I did not rate this very highly. I rated it 2 stars. Then I felt like reading an award winner, another award-winning author. This was Les from Andrew Sean Greer, and Les was a Pulitzer Prize winner, I think, 2016 or 17. And I gravitated towards that. I tend to enjoy Pulitzer winners. This was a really fun book and very funny. I love the story of Arthur Les, who is almost grieving his former lover's new wedding. He's getting married. They were together 9 years. Younger man for Arthur. And he decides he needs to get out of the country because he does not want to be expected to go to the wedding. And he goes on kind of a world tour of different locations that he hobbles together based on invitations to literary prizes, literary festivals, speaking engagements. He has a teaching engagement. And so it describes Arthur Less's revolving around the world in different locations. It's really super funny. I really had a lot of fun reading this, but I was questioning the Pulitzer win. I think there's a certain level of literature that I'm expecting for a Pulitzer Prize winning book. I don't really think this was it, but I really did enjoy the reading experience. The next one was nonfiction, and it's The Soul of an Octopus by Sy Montgomery. I kind of did my own analysis, and I usually read about 10% nonfiction. This one is super short, so I thought, hey, I'll get my Goodreads reading goal up by reading a short book. I loved this book. This was so interesting, and it was so well written by Montgomery. She's a naturalist, and she wrote in a narrative nonfiction way with so much emotion and so much soul of her experiences meeting and understanding octopuses. And no, it's not octopi, as she states in the book, because that would put a Latin ending on a Greek word. But it's the soul of an octopus. She describes the octopuses that she personally met, their personalities. They're living in she is from New England, so she's talking about her experiences at the New England Aquarium. She talks about learning how to dive in order to see octopuses in the wild. She talks about the people she met and worked with, her volunteer work. I truly love this book. It was so beautiful and so emotional and narrative nonfiction in the best way. She told the story wonderfully while also teaching me something. I think I gave this 4 or 5 stars on Goodreads. The next book is a middle/high school grade book, and this is Laurie Halse Anderson's Speak. This is a very important book. It's the story of a high school freshman who is raped at a end of summer party. And in this short book, it describes how she deals with entering high school after this experience, how she deals with the social aspects of high school, and what happens to her emotional state as she keeps the secret of what happened to her. The picture of the tree and the title are very important to the structure of the story, and it's an important topic to talk about. It's an important book for young people, not just women, but young people to read, because it puts this issue, it writes it in a way that is accessible and understandable while also provoking discussion. Very well written, very good book. Would highly recommend this to young people in your life. And the last book for the first half of December that I read was This Is How It Always Is by Laurie Frankel. This is the story, I don't think this is a spoiler, this is the story of a young boy named Claude who grows into a tween girl named Poppy. And again, another important topic for discussion. This was such a well-developed family story about how a family handles this young child's transition in their identity. I loved the story, and I at the very beginning, probably the first third of the book, I really enjoyed Frankel's writing style. However, it quickly evolved into a very purplish prose descriptive style that became unrealistic, and there were some transitions towards the last third of the book and some unbelievable tie-ups, but still the family was loving and warm and nuanced and flawed. And again, the topic is so important to consider and to talk about. It made me learn, and it made me realize that there is so much work to be done in learning about people who are different than us, and learning about people who are loving and rich and full of personality and full of experiences that are unknown to me or unknown to many of us. But it teaches me that not to be afraid of hard subjects, not to be afraid of learning something about a group of people who simply want to be known and simply want to get their stories out and get their experiences exposed. So I really enjoyed the reading experience. I wasn't crazy about the writing style, but I really did enjoy reading about Claude and Poppy and their family experiences. So far that's it for December. My reading goal is officially 101 books for the year. I am 4 books away from an average of 2 books a week. That's what I'm shooting for. So I hope the rest of your month is full of great reading. Thanks a lot for stopping by again. Put some comments down below and subscribe if you are so moved to. And I will see you soon. Have a great day. Bye.